Hi there. Thanks for joining me here on Conversations for Yoga Teachers. I'm your host, Karen Fabian, the founder of Bare Bones Yoga and the creator of the Momentum Magic Method, the way to become a confident teacher, one who effortlessly walks around the room, shares clear cues, easily builds sequences, and speaks from your heart, sharing authentically with your students. Here on the podcast, you'll discover new and inspiring ways to share your cues and create your sequences. You'll uncover habits and frameworks all designed to empower you so that you can teach in a way that feels authentic and natural. For some episodes, I'll have a guest, and other episodes I'll share with you on my own, and in each one, you'll always get action steps and takeaways you can apply right away to your teaching. In addition to the podcast, follow me on Instagram and TikTok for daily videos. You'll see a link on both of my profiles, my Stan Store link. Click it and unlock ways you can get the support you need to be the teacher of your dreams. You'll find links to the podcast, my free ebook, and other resources to help you be the best teacher you can be. You'll also find the link to my signature program, the Yoga Anatomy Blueprint Learning Program, and you can see if you qualify to enroll. So with that, let's get on with today's show. Hi there. Welcome to Conversations for Yoga Teachers. I'm your host, Karen Fabian, and this is episode 358. I am recording this on July 4th, 2025, and this episode will go live in a couple of days on Monday, July 7th. Today's an interview episode, so in a moment, I'm going to give you some brief background on the guest who will be joining me today. But I wanted to start out and just number one, say hello. I haven't done a solo episode in a while, so I feel like I front load these interview episodes with just a quick check in with you just to see how you're doing and just to say hi. I do hear from a lot of people during the week when I have coaching calls or when I'm talking to people on social media that people are listening to the podcast. And of course, I know people are listening because I get the stats on the back end, but it's always nice to hear from people who listen to the podcast. So if you and I have talked and if you've mentioned to me that, hey, I listened to this episode or that episode, I just want to acknowledge you and say thank you so much for listening. If this is the first time you've listened to the show, thank you so much for pressing play, and I'm glad you're here today. The one thing I did want to share, and then I'll get into the intro of our guest, is I wanted to share with you how amazingly well my latest program is going in terms of the results yoga teachers are getting. And this isn't coming from me. You can look at the enrollment page and you can see the testimonials from the teachers who are there. So take a look at that. If you're the kind of teacher who wants to learn anatomy, who knows that it's something you didn't learn in your teacher training, this program is absolutely for you. I created it as an accelerated version off of my 90-day one-on-one program because teachers were asking me for something shorter and more focused, something easy to fit into their schedule. So in just 4 sessions, you'll learn the essentials of anatomy and how to apply it to your teaching. So that's all I'm going to say for now. If you are listening to this episode in the month of July 2025, get in touch with me because I have one spot left for the July group. I run this program from month to month. I did a cohort in May, a cohort in June, and as of today, July 4th, I'll be starting the July cohort next week. You can jump in anytime in the month of July for that July session. So if you're ready to learn anatomy, not just to learn it, but to feel more confident when you're teaching, this program is absolutely for you. You will emerge transformed in just 4 sessions, feeling more confident, knowing how to do things like build a sequence with a peak pose, share anatomy in your cues, and truly understand the why behind what you're saying. And that is the transformative piece out of everything else, because now you're teaching from what you know. And when you teach from what you know, your confidence grows. So because you're listening to the podcast, I'm going to offer you a $50 discount on the program. So your total investment will just be $347 US dollars. So to get the link, to get the coupon code, just send me a DM on Instagram or email me, podcast offer accelerator, and I'll give you all of the details you need to enroll and take that discount as a gift and as a thank you for listening to the show. So, with that, I want to share with you a little bit about the guest that will be joining me today. Dr. Jodi Blinco is the founder of Yoga Cowgirl, a lifestyle brand and philosophy that merges the rugged spirit of the West with the ancient wisdom of yoga. After years in corporate leadership and academia, Jodi felt called back to something deeper, the earthy, soul-filled connection she remembered from her childhood on horseback. Disillusioned with the Barbie doll version of yoga she encountered, she created Yoga Cowgirl as a response, a space for those craving authenticity, groundedness, and personal liberation through practice. Jodi brings a unique lens as both a holistic wellness facilitator and experienced education strategist. Her work centers on helping people embody clarity, resilience, and presence, not just on the mat, but in the way they live, work, and lead. So, with that, we're going to hop over to my conversation with Dr. Jodi Blinco, and I'll also direct you to the show notes where there is a more extensive bio for Dr. Blinco. Here we go. Hi, Dr. Jodi Blinco. Thank you so much for joining me here on Conversations for Yoga Teachers.
Thank you for having me, Karen. I'm excited to be here.
Cool. So why don't you start out? Tell me where you are in the world right now.
Right now, I and home is in North Texas.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I've kind of lived all over the country at various points in my life and career and even all over the world. But I met my husband 8 years ago, and here I am in North Texas.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Now, I know that you have an affinity for horses, and I am an avid horse person as well. So I was really excited. I know there's so many other things we're going to talk about today. I'd love to just give you an opportunity to share a little bit about your love of horses, what that looks like in today times, maybe anything that comes to you, because that's a big passion of mine too.
Yeah, I know we have alignment there. So I love that we started with this. So growing up, my connection and love for horses goes all the way back. I think it was 8 years old when I got my first horse named Smokey. And Smokey was not, she's a mare, and she was not broke when we got her. So I share that to say I learned so much about my own courage and resilience in going through that process. But I showed horses all growing up, was in 4-H and quarter horse, and just it taught me, as I was just saying, so my connection with her and my responsibilities and writing just taught me so much, so many life skills. One, that I think really I carried into my early adult years. And fast forward now to my life in North Texas. You know, we have 2 rescue horses now and 7 longhorn cows. And anyway, I won't go too much into Yoga Cowgirl right now, but the connection to just animals and horses in particular, but also the care for animals. I think just I'm so grateful that I had that experience early on, because it taught me more than I think we have time for to really talk about on today's conversation. So,
Yeah, I mean, I love that. And I feel like when you grow up around not just animals, but horses in particular, where you're riding the horse, there's so much you learn through nonverbal signals.
yes.
And I almost feel like it's sort of like talking to the universe and getting messages from the universe and being able to recognize that the universe is talking to you right now versus somebody else that might say, oh, that was just a coincidence. So I'm curious, and we'll get into a little bit more about your background, but since you do so much on teaching and learning and skill building, is there a connection to that sort of way that you learned when you were riding a horse and you didn't have the ability? I mean, I even think as a yoga teacher, we're teaching people, they're not talking back.
Yep.
when you're riding a horse, they're not talking back, but they are definitely communicating. So what does that bring up for you when you think?
Really powerful question. Yeah, and great question. I love that. And I also really appreciate your connection to the nonverbals in the universe talking to you. And as I was younger, I over time obviously picked up on the nonverbals that Smokey was giving me, or the horse was giving me. And I do think the development of that intuition and that perception and being present.
Mm,
If you aren't present in those moments, you're not able to connect as much with the animal. And I think that's such a strong parallel for, as you said, my coaching and teaching work. My mind can't be a million other places as I'm with one individual. I have to be, and I enjoy being completely present in that moment, because you are picking up on um, body language. If you don't have the visual, you're picking up on voice tone, and obviously the words that people are saying. If we have monkey mind and our mind is wherever, it's, the grocery list or the to-do list, we're not present in those moments. And so again, I don't know that I was fully cognizant when I was younger, other than, oh, her ears are back, that means she's upset or she doesn't like that, or the way I'm holding my body or the way that I'm showing up that day is causing her to respond in a certain way. Or if I'm fearful, she's picking up on that energy. There were a lot of moments. She was a great trail horse as well. I rode Western Pleasure, and she just intuitively was a really good trail horse. But there were definitely moments where she was unsure. And so the second I got cues from her that, oh, she's unsure, I would tense up. And I think learning that relationship of energy with an animal is so powerful. And over time, again, subconsciously, I think it helped me to develop that connection with energy and other people, and that intuition and perception and presence.
yeah, yeah. I mean, such a deep rooted skill to build, and I'm sure that you leverage that in lots of different areas. So now's a good time to just tell me a little bit about what you're doing, what you've done. I mean, I know that obviously could go on for hours, so you can sort of pick and choose. I mean, some
Yeah.
of the things that stood out to me when I was reading is your background in education in terms of helping people learn in different settings. I don't even know if that's a great way to describe
Yeah.
it, but empowering, as I see here, empowering educators. So tell me a little bit about that. How did you get into that, and what did that look like, or does that look like now?
Yeah, and I will absolutely spend some time on I owned a yoga studio outside of Boston, Massachusetts
Oh,
for
that's where I am.
years. Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
forgot to mention it at the beginning.
So I owned a yoga studio in Hingham,
Yeah, okay.
Massachusetts. And that was after 8 years of being a practitioner and getting my teaching certification. And I share that, one, because obviously it's relevant to the audience and the listeners, but that was after, at that point in time, it was about a decade in higher education and coaching and developing and leading people, but also having this love for the yoga practice that I was developing, outside of the corporate space, if you will. Once I left that corporate space, I wanted to channel everything I had learned from a business perspective, from a coaching perspective, to the yoga studio space. And so I really wanted to have yoga and mindfulness practices be accessible to the beginner audience. If you have started along that journey, we're all in different places with it. You have a different comfort level, but I found my connection was, I want to bring as many new people to the practice as possible, and help it be accessible, help it not be scary. And so that was a big commitment that I made with the studio, as much as nurturing advanced practitioners. And then that work, I started traveling quite a bit. I had the opportunity to go to Bulgaria and run a studio over there for a month. And and teach in the English language, but no one really spoke the English language. So that when you talk about cues and presence and so those experiences, and then I have taught in different studios and workshops all over the country, but the connection or the foundation, the transferable skill, if you will, was really bringing the practice and my interpretation, if you of the practice to people in a way that felt inspirational, digestible, and again was just being that space of release and peace and presence. And again, I feel like I really channeled that to beginners and still do when I get the opportunity to teach. But I going back to your question of how does that show up, the yoga studio, the workshops, the teaching in that way. But I also developed a company called Zen Leader, which is part of bringing the yoga in the corporate space, because I think we can all connect at some point in our lives to the work-life balance or the chaos that the work environment, or even the toxicity in some cases the work environment can create. And so Zen Leader is all about how do you take care of the human being in the middle while also impacting the business, and again bringing holistic practices in a way that's not too woo woo for people, where they go, somebody that's never heard or ever done meditation,
Yeah.
bringing that in an accessible way. Someone that doesn't know about chakras or crystals or breathing, just offering it up in a way that is, I'm interested. I'm going to keep looking into that. So that's a long way to get there, but I think there's some offerings there of how I've brought the yoga in with the business and really where my heart is. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I find that nothing is lost in our life. Like I had a whole corporate career before I started teaching, and there's definitely things that I pull from that. So it's sort of like sometimes when I talk to teachers and they say, "Oh, well, I used to do this, but now I'm a teacher." And it's like, "Hey, you're probably pulling from that whole other thing you were doing, even though you're teaching yoga now, especially if you've left someone like me who left a corporate career to teach yoga full time. I still
Yes.
draw on that quite a bit. So one of the things that I noticed in the notes when I took a look at them beforehand and thinking of things to ask you, there was one phrase, performative polish, that really caught my eye. And I'd love to talk about this a little bit more because I would say the number one thing that yoga teachers tell me is that they wish they felt more confident when they're teaching their classes. And this sort of can show up in a lot of different ways. I feel like nowadays, this whole concept of imposter syndrome, which we never used to really call that, is now what we seem to call it. And so, whether it's that or maybe just feeling like you're sort of faking in and you're not being authentic, that can be another expression of not feeling confident. But when I saw this term performative polish, I thought, oh, I would love to talk a little bit more with you about what does that mean and how do we sort of shift from that to being more grounded in showing up the way we are
Yeah,
really designed to show up, which, is the way the universe wants us to show up.
absolutely. And at the root of it all, that performative polish comes from a place of authenticity and connecting to who you are at your core. But as we all know, that's an evolution all by itself.
Yeah.
And I will share this quick story about my yoga teacher certification. When I was going through the program, I was feeling really confident because I had practiced for a really long time. I was feeling really confident. I got great feedback from my instructors. And then I went for my final exam, which was teaching a real class in front of people that I didn't know, not in front of my fellow students. And I failed. I failed my first exam. And I will never forget this moment. It's like I'm reliving it every time I tell the story. The facilitator sat me down when he was giving me feedback and he said, I'm not sure what happened, but that was like a death of 1,000 cuts. He goes, it just got worse and worse and worse. And what was interesting to me is I felt it and we can connect to that, right? There's a difference between, okay, I'm not really sure if I'm getting positive cues back, if they like the class, if they don't, if is it resonating versus, oh, this is just bad. One, right, inside where it's just one, and I felt it. I knew I was going downhill, but you can't just stop the class.
No.
And so obviously I had some additional coaching, and then I retook my exam, but I retook my exam impromptu. It wasn't as if had this, okay, on this date, you're going to go in. And so I share that one because that was a very human, humbling, authentic experience all by itself. And somewhere along the lines, I had this thought that as long as I had music, then I could teach to the music. Well, guess what happened that day? The music stopped working. And so it just completely crumbled me. So going back to your question of this performative polish, the concept is as I mentioned, being authentic to your core, but you can't get there until you have experiences like that where you do crash and burn, and you learn, and you pick yourself up. And over time, those experiences of, okay, this my ego got in the way, my mind got in the way, I overthought this, I thought I had it all figured out, and I don't. And I think those are the experiences that start to chip away at the ego, that also allow the authentic being to come forward and allow that to be okay. So it's not necessarily just a fake it till you make it. It's, if you're teaching in the class and you stumble, you know what? Let me pause first. Let me just ground myself for a second, and making that okay. Because one of the things I have, especially when I'm in the suit jacket, as I am in now doing coaching and development, I have found that I connect more strongly with people when I'm just human, when I'm not performing or showing up in a box, or it has to sound like this, look like this, feel like this. Because people, there was a gal from, she's a professor, I think at, I can't remember the name of the school. It's in Southern California. I will never forget these words. She said to me, human beings are exquisite detectors of BS. And that, I was already, I think at some point we are made to think or believe I have to show up in this box and, again, perform or look like this or wear the suit or whatever it is. I know I had that experience, but I think we get that confused with this performative polish. We have to perform and be something that we're not, when it's really about failing and uncovering and releasing and showing up and saying, you know what, I'm struggling today too. Let's just have a conversation, or just being human, because that's where the presence is. That's where the connection is. And that's where we can really cut through anything that is surface level or not really getting us. It's standing in the way of that connection is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and really showing up authentically. It's sort of,
Yes.
yeah. When you were describing your experience, I talk a lot about the skill of teaching yoga, or the experience of teaching yoga can be really triggering for people. And with a lot of the teachers I work with, they're brought back to maybe different experiences they had as a kid, or feeling self-conscious in different situations as an adult. And it's something about walking in the room and having people look at you that can bring these things up. And then overlaid on top of it is, well, I'm teaching this practice that's been around for a really long time. And I have this thought that people are expecting me to be an expert in the philosophy and the anatomy and the sequencing. And now the bar is just getting higher and higher. So it sounds like, as many of us, myself included, go through that first experience, it was like, oh my God, these kinds of things are, kind of coming up to me. The other thing that it reminded me of, and this is another thing I hear a lot, is that sort of expectation a lot of teachers tell me they have, that shifting from being a student to being a teacher would be easy because I know the practice.
Yes.
So I'd love to get your thoughts on this from a learning point of view. I always talk to teachers about the idea that, from a learning perspective, learning the poses to do them is different from learning the poses to teach them. So
Mhm.
I don't know, like with your background in teaching and helping people learn, what comes up for you around that learning skill?
Yeah, and I can absolutely relate to what you just shared. I believe that too. Well, I feel, really strong in my practice. So this is going to be an easy transition. And oh, by the way, I lead a team and I coach and develop people. So of course I got this. And I was, as I just shared with you, very quickly humbled in the real setting. Um, and it obviously was a serving experience to have that. But I do think without a doubt, it's different. I think there are components that you can take from your experience as a practitioner, and just like anything else,
Yeah.
equate that to what classes or what structures or what did I really enjoy? Certain classes where I laid on the mat feeling, wow, that felt great, or I walked out of the studio. Um, Taking components of those experiences and really thinking, this is a question that I know when I teach now, when I had the studio, when I was teaching, I would ask myself, what is the experience I want people to have?
Mm.
And that helped me to ground down and get really, because otherwise I will tell you, and this still happens, I still have to bring myself back in the moment. I don't know that it ever goes away. Maybe you have a different experience, but that voice cranks up for me of, is this good enough? Are they enjoying it? Is the music too loud? Do they not like the chatter just, gets in the way. So asking yourself that question of, what is the experience I want people to have? One is grounding, has been really grounding for me. And then it also helps me to think about structure, poses, music, feel. Um, are we going really symbolic with this practice? And symbolism for me, in any of the work that I do, I love for people to have a deeper meaning or connection. And um, so I always try to build that into experiences.
Mhm.
But uh, that has been a guidepost to help me come out of my head and um, also not get into a space of, again, I'm just speaking from personal experience, anxiety that would cause me to go into just going through the motions and just calling, like not calling out poses, but you understand what I'm saying, like just leading the class through poses to check the box.
Right.
um and I would kind of go on one side or the other of that pendulum. So okay, this is the experience that you want them to walk away with, or that you're hoping to create, the space
Yeah.
that you're hoping to create, so they walk away and go, wow, I feel X, Y, and Z. So yeah, that's what comes to mind as I think about that question, and just
Mhm.
how it all has come together, and just continues to come together, but also very real of where the mind can
Yeah.
get in the way.
Yeah, I feel like when you mentioned this idea of what kind of experience do I want them to have, that can sometimes shift the focus from, if I'm feeling nervous, but instead I switch the lens almost from selfie mode to landscape mode. Like now I'm thinking less about my nervousness and more about what kind of experience do I want these people to have, or even the person right in front of me. And
Yeah.
so I love that you brought that up because I think that's a great technique for helping somebody decrease their nerves when they're teaching if they start to focus outward on
Mm-hmm.
exactly what you said. What kind of experience do I want these people to have? And now maybe I'm not thinking as much about forgetting the sequence or feeling nervous or feeling self-conscious. Now I'm creating a space for them.
Yes. And just like we would, I think too, when those moments come up where we can start to get in our head or get nervous or anxious, even if we have that intention of what kind of experience or how can I serve, even if we start in that space, but we start to fishtail a little bit as we're teaching. I think calling out that energy when we feel it, that goes back to that performative polish. You know
Yeah.
what? Let me just take a minute myself, or I'm getting too there's that's that humanness, and that's the realness in the evolution of you as an individual and a teacher. And we're all human. That's the one common element, right? We can all relate to that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was having a conversation yesterday with somebody who I was interviewing for the show, and she's not a yoga teacher, but she's taken a lot of classes, and she
Mhm.
actually is a performance coach. So some of her clients are yoga teachers as well as have corporate jobs. And she was saying to me at the end of the conversation, it's such good work and it's such important work that yoga teachers are doing. Now more than ever, people are stressed and they're dealing with
Mhm.
multiple things in their life. And what you're doing is such important work. And I thought, I knew that. It was just really interesting for me to hear it from someone who's not a yoga teacher, that her perspective on the work that yoga teachers do is
Yeah.
important. And I had a lot of thoughts when I thought that, even the idea that so many yoga teachers are accepting rates for their services that are well below market rate because they don't think what they're doing is of value, or they don't think because they're a newer teacher, they're worth it. And just that whole financial aspect of this idea. But I
Yeah.
also thought about, if we are doing important work, it really means that as yoga teachers, we have to go in and sort of have our house in order so that we are suited to be of service. So when you said of service before, that's what triggered this conversation in my mind. So when you think about, you know, going in to any situation, could be a business situation, could be teaching a yoga class, and sort of having, I'm calling it today, your house in order. Like, even when I look on my notes here and I see, um, there was something I wanted to ask you about. Oh, the holistic emotional awareness, and
Mhm.
some of what I saw here about techniques, mindfulness techniques to manage thoughts, reduce stress, cultivate inner peace. I thought, oh, I would love to know more about that. And I bet those techniques that you teach people would fit in with this conversation, because if I'm the kind of person who's teaching yoga and part of being of service means I need to quiet those intrusive thoughts, or I need to feel more confident when I'm going into my classes, what am I doing when I'm not teaching to build up that part of me so that when I do go in and teach, I can feel like I can be of service and do the good work as we're talking about. So maybe tell me a little bit about these techniques, these mindfulness techniques that reduce stress and cultivate inner peace. Anything that you want to share, I think would be helpful.
Yeah. So two offerings come to mind. One, I talk a lot about in Zen Leader in the corporate space, and I think it will resonate
Yeah.
very seamlessly with this audience, is managing your energy ROI, your energy return on investment.
Mhm.
And so we talk a lot in yoga about energy in different ways, right? But this work and this exercise really helps you tap into um, reflection and analysis on where do you spend the bulk of your time in a day to day,
Mhm.
and how does it make you feel? So that first, it's an inventory, like a physical inventory of, am I spending 8 hours at work? Am I spending 4 hours in the car every day? So just mapping out a typical day logistically, where are you spending physically your time? And
Yes.
then the next layer to that is, how does that usage of your energy, what is the feeling that comes up with that?
Mhm.
Is the pattern mostly frustration? Is it happiness? Is it nothing at all? Is it obligation?
Mhm.
What is the feeling associated with where that energy is being spent? And then, just like a balance sheet, red means we're in the red, it's a deficit. Green means we're in the positive.
Mhm.
It's a visual way for people to think about with these feelings that I have, would I put a red or a green to it? Is it adding? Is it giving back? Is it taking away? And if you look throughout your day to day, do you have more red moments than you have green? Or do
Yeah.
you have more green than you have red? And so looking at where you're spending your physical energy first, because your mental and emotional energy is going to follow, which is where the feeling portion comes in. That kind of reflective exercise helps you to say, wow, I've got a lot of red in my week. Is that within my control? You know, are there things that I'm just going to have to, that are still obligation for me, but maybe I need to find flashes of green in that red? Where can I control my controllables and add more to my tank? And so there's a process and an exercise that goes with what does give me green? What, and where can I, even if it's for 30 seconds, even if it's sitting in the car when I get to work or before I get on Zoom, and just taking a moment. I might not be able to sit down in front of a set of candles for 30 minutes every single day. But where can I add more green in my life? Because that's going to give back, and green looks different for everybody. So that's one example of really how can you manage your energy ROI. The other thing that's really interesting, and this is not my work, but I have used it for years and it is really, really powerful, is a thought model developed by, her name is Brooke Castillo. And so she has this acronym of CTFAR, CTFAR. And I'm sure we've heard different iterations of this, but C is circumstance, T is thought, F is feeling, A is action, R is result. So the concept is C is the circumstance you don't have any control over. It could be a person, a place, the weather, a thing. It's going to do what it's going to do. But the what comes after that, the T is really where you have the opportunity to have an impact. That's the thought. So the power is in identifying what are your 2 or 3 common repeating thought patterns that show up when these moments in your life happen over and over again, that get you, that aren't serving you, right? So what is the thought, and then working that process all the way through to look at the result. And it's really interesting because she talks about when you get to the result, you can almost draw an arrow from the R back up to the T, and you get this cyclical thought pattern, right? And so she talks about, the neural pathways and how it's like a matter of nanoseconds that stuff is firing. And that's how we end up kind of just wallowing in some of these same patterns that don't help us. So that would be that's a personal tool that I have used quite a bit, is to distill it down and say, what are the circumstances that are causing these repeating, triggering thoughts that are not helping me? I notice that in a matter of seconds, I go from here to here, and it's not helping me. And so reworking that thought is another tool, and it takes a ton of just presence and conscious effort, because our thoughts are constant. And if we don't police them or manage them, they will either serve us or not serve us. And so those would be 2 offerings that I work with people quite a bit, to just maybe take a different perspective on it or spin on it. I don't think either of those things are brand new, like silver bullet stuff, but maybe it packages it a little bit differently.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, as I was listening to you in the ROI metaphor, I thought of a lot of the teachers I work with spend so much time prepping for their classes, creating a new sequence every week, that then when they go into the room, they're so focused on the sequence. So when I think about the ROI, most of their energy is spent being in the room, thinking about what comes next in the sequence. And so most of their mental energy is there, and not a lot of mental energy is spent walking around the room, watching the students, being of service. So I can even sort of use that framework that you shared and sort of niche it down specifically for yoga teachers. And it sort of jives with what I talk about, which is how can we get that ROI? I kind of talk about it like a battery where most of your battery power is focused on the sequence, but we could talk about it in an ROI perspective and say, oh, how can I get the ROI to be more green in terms of all you were talking about before, being really present, being of service, feeling like I'm being authentic. So I think that's a really good exercise to do, to kind of look for the red and the green and see where can I make even some little shifts to try to get more to the green side. So what does, we talked at the start about the horses, and you mentioned the yoga cowgirl, and I didn't know about the studio, so that was really cool, especially for
Yeah.
Boston. Um, and I know you mentioned a couple times about education and clients you work with. So what does things look like for you now? I mean, you obviously moved from Boston to Texas. You had a studio. I don't know. Like, so just give me a picture of what are things looking like now for you? Where are you focusing your time?
Yeah, the majority of my energy right now is being spent in leadership and skill development in any capacity. So that could be in higher education, it could be working with teams and organizations, speaking, keynote workshops. Zen leader is where a lot of my energy is also being developed. And then also looking for forward thinking ways of how can I translate some of the real-time coaching and leadership development through, not to jump on the AI bandwagon, but through AI in a moment where, let's say someone is they just got out of a really tough meeting, or they need to present whatever it is, a concept, a strategy, or they have a difficult employee, creating a coaching resource that they can access in real time, because we might not be having a group coaching session or a one-on-one coaching session. Or so all that to say, um, the foundation of my work is on coaching and skill development, and the pathway right now is speaking, workshops, Zen leader, and within just higher education development.
Got it. I like the idea. I mean, I think I know sometimes people are worried about it, and there's things on the news about, oh, it's going to take over everybody's job. I mean, I think the reality is it's here to stay, and how it actually plays out is
Yeah.
yet to be seen. I mean, in the here and now, and obviously in the future. But I like the idea of sort of when you were talking about, helping somebody where maybe I can give them a system or a process if I'm not available, or maybe they can leverage something repeatable by using a particular process or algorithm or whatever. And I think about that a lot because like I was saying in the beginning, my corporate background, I've systematized a lot for yoga teachers. And a lot of times
Mhm.
they'll say to me, how come nobody shared this with me before? Like a standard way to create a sequence, or when I teach anatomy, I have a 10-step blueprint. And from a learning perspective, I really lean into you just have to follow the steps.
Yeah.
Step one, you go to step 10. Each step depends on the step prior. And so I really think that's an important thing because, for teaching yoga, there's sort of that dual aspect. There's being in the moment and the energetic, but there's also I'm going in the room, I'm sharing cues, I'm working with people that I don't know, and I'm teaching a sequence. So there's quite a bit there that can be sort
Yes.
of systematized without losing that organic in the moment sort of presence. So I think there's, probably when you were teaching yoga, did you sort of pull from that skill set you have around the way you look at things when you're doing the business skill building?
Yeah, though, Karen, I feel like what you just described and what you are offering to your teachers, I I wish I would have had that guidance, because what the way I interpret that for skill development work, the parallel that I'm drawing there is what you're doing is you're helping with the system and with the steps that you're creating, you're helping people get out of their head, because you're giving them this framework. So it empowers and it allows and it develops confidence versus saying, just be more confident or you'll get more confident. People are like, okay, well, I've been doing this for 8 years. When does that happen? You know? So what you're doing is providing, you're kind of taking that a level of anxiety off the brain of, okay, what should I do next and how should it show up? And let me just plug into the system and then I can bring me
Right.
to this system. And because you're right, there's so many things happening in that classroom and environment. And so yes, that absolutely resonates with me, not only for the way that you are talking about offering it. And I wish that I would have had that, because I'll tell you, I do think while I was able to do that in my corporate career with, skill development other ways, I didn't translate that as well when I was developing sequences for my classes.
Mhm.
And because I think until I got to the place of what experience do I want them to have, which that didn't come right away. That was, again, over time, I was caught up in, is this good enough? Is this right? Let me just do what I saw my teachers do, but I wasn't connected to it. So I love that you do that for your teachers. And um, that's so powerful, because
Yeah.
it's helping them step out of the chaos that can start in here, which once that train gets rolling, especially when you're teaching, you end up with, like me, like death of a thousand cuts,
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think of it too from the point of view of learning anything. And I mean, I think about all the things that you're teaching people, and when you're doing keynote speeches and when you're working with a business or a business leader, the things that you're sort of translating for them, which are things that you've learned.
Mhm.
How do you take what's in your head that's become unconscious and sort of make it a framework, make it a process, make it a system, so that somebody who doesn't know and who might look at you and say, oh, I wish I could have, like if you're speaking, the confidence that this person has. Well, how do
Mhm.
you take your way of being and your way of thinking, which are two energetic ways, right?
Yeah.
And write it down or make it something that somebody can learn from. So I'm curious, when you work with people, do you draw on that idea? And like you were mentioning before, getting into AI maybe has encouraged sort of the creation of more of these frameworks. Is that part of what you offer people, different ways to
Oh
do
yeah.
based
Yeah.
on?
And it's all drawn off of personal experience, right? Of the bad, the good, the ugly, because that's part of our, again, my thought process, but part of the value and the impact of our journey. I went through this. I feel connected to, gosh, I don't want, I'll use this as an example. So, when I stepped into my first leadership role, I really didn't understand that it was about serving my team and taking care of them. I thought, well, I'm the leader now. Everybody's going to follow me. And that's just how it works. And so I really, again, crashed and burned my first 6 months. And I went into my boss's office and I said, you picked the wrong person. I can't do this. Let me go into a different role. She was like, nope, you're staying here. Figure it out, get it done. I'm grateful to her for this day, because that whole experience, that's an example of, I learned a lot of things that helped me to analyze data, to lead people, to understand my own leadership brand, if you will, and how to translate that. And I packaged it all into courses, coaching, and consulting. So it's that's part of the work that I do in higher ed, but that's the system that I'm referring to. Of that's what that product, if you will, looks like. But just like anything else, somebody could read that and go, okay, well, that all sounds good. The magic happens in the coaching and the experience
Right.
and the synthesizing, but then also going through it. I can't, I've had 3 conversations today with people where it's like, okay, we got this. This is a step that we're going to take next. And then
Yeah.
we're going to talk next week. Um, and I am so passionate about that work, because that's where the development happens. That's where the magic happens. And then what you're really offering somebody, and I think without a doubt, what we were just talking about with your work that you're doing is you're teaching somebody a skill that they can then have a ripple effect and
Yeah.
say, I learned this from Karen, and I was way more confident in the classroom. And I went from here to here. Here's what you need to do, because you've made it accessible with your system, with your, however you're packaging it. And, but all that has come from learned experience and,
Yeah.
so.
But don't you think too, it does take a certain like way of looking at things that you can make it systems, make it like, I feel like on some level, that is a certain like superpower that some people have, where other people are maybe more intuitive and more sort of leaving things. Like I remember I coached a teacher one time and she never liked to plan her sequence, even though it freaked her out to walk into the room and not really have anything planned.
Yeah.
She didn't think she was the kind of person who was planful, who could plan ahead. So her identity was preventing her from alleviating her stress because she didn't identify with the kind of person who planned things. It sounds like for you, and certainly for me, that's part of just
Yeah.
how you look at things. And so you're able to sort of take something that's kind of an amalgam and say, okay, we're going to organize this part, we're going to create this process, here's the procedure manual, like that's
Yes. Without a doubt, I definitely think people have either innately or
yeah.
developed skills that they gravitate to. I mean, I've got a plan to have a plan to have a plan, and have 3 different to-do lists. So absolutely, I thrive in that space.
Yeah.
I do think the example that you just shared of the
A
maybe
teacher.
the internal belief that goes back to that model that I was talking about, this belief of I'm not a good planner. Ah,
Yeah.
it's this ripple effect, and then the result is the same and the cycle is the same. And so it's interesting what are the beliefs that
Mhm.
are developed at a very young age, those core beliefs that still get in our way as we evolve, until we start to chip away at them and maybe test our skills. Maybe we don't start, with a big planning project. Maybe we start really small, and so develop those skills over time. But yeah, great point.
Yeah, and I liked when you said before about the magic part because you were talking about it in terms of the learning and the having conversations in addition to having things written down. I
Mm-hmm.
come across that a lot because so many yoga teachers now learn in sort of an isolated way. They enroll in a program and there's so much video without a lot of, something like this where it's
Yeah.
not in person, but it's live interaction. And they'll say to me, like, there is this piece missing where I'm not really able to talk to somebody, maybe the person who created the program, who gave me access to the videos. So that magic, I certainly find, comes from having the live conversation, even if you're supplementing the learning with videos and a procedure manual. I almost feel like you need that live interaction with the person to make the magic happen so things start to stick in the brain and they can start to, have conversations about real life examples and real life questions that they have about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the processing part. It's energy processing in a different way. You're
Yeah.
writing it, and I think that's the magic. And so whatever AI, I agree, is definitely here to stay. But that human element, the EQ and the human part of that,
Yeah, it's never going to
can't
go away.
replace it. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So as we're wrapping up, I'd love to just for a little bit, I know you mentioned the yoga cowgirl piece. What does that look like? I mean, especially now, it sounds like you're spending a lot of your time in the business end of things. You had the studio. So what does that look like in terms of, it sounds like maybe it's a little passion project for you
Yeah.
because of courses. What is,
Yeah, it's very much a passion project. The brand itself, it's currently live, but it's going to relaunch in July because it's just taken shape and evolved like everything else has. But it was developed in a way for me to still be able to teach and offer workshops. And again, the whole yoga cowgirl concept was, let's bring in as many people as possible in a fun,
yeah,
uh, accessible way. um, with the music themes and, you know, all that. But really the cowgirl piece of it was you're bringing together the peace and the zen and the mindfulness of the yoga with the relentless spirit of the cowgirl, where you've got grit and you've got that authenticity and, hey, I'm going to do it my way. And I'm good with me. And, so the brand, and just in terms of time commitment and passion offering, I will continue to do the yoga experiences, but it really will become more of a lifestyle thought development brand when it relaunches.
Yeah, I mean, certainly with your background and you grew up around horses, I think it's a natural thing.
Yeah.
So and it's such a nice blend. I have a really good friend of mine who has ridden all her life, and she's a longtime yoga teacher, and she still teaches kids how to ride horses and is a yoga teacher. So there's, just like we were talking about at the beginning, so many similarities there. I mean, to be a teacher of anything is to be a teacher and to learn those skills. And it's such a way to work with people. Well, awesome. Well, this was fantastic. Thank you so much for your time and sharing, your story. I'd love for people to know how to reach you. So, and anything that you want to share in terms of having people connect with you, just let us know.
Yeah, so my website actually I just hung up with the designer like 2 hours ago. We relaunched it. So it's all sorts of new beginnings and relaunching, but it's jodiblinco.com.
Okay.
So that's where you can learn more. Instagram, I'm on Facebook and Instagram, but Instagram is really my primary channel, if you will, and that's Dr. Jodi Blinco. So I would love to connect with you all and say hello or reach out with questions. Would love to connect.
Awesome. Well, stay on. I'm going to end our recording.
Okay.
I'm going to just close by saying to the listener, bye-bye, and thank you. Thank you so much for your time today. Thanks for being here with me today. I hope you enjoyed the episode. And hey, one more thing. While I don't know you personally, I know what a yoga teacher looks like who's ready to have a breakthrough to being the kind of yoga teacher who walks around the room, sharing cues you know the reason for, understands anatomy, teaching signature sequences without notes or any need to practice with class, and loves teaching yoga without stress, anxiety, or nervousness. If you are ready to be that yoga teacher, here is your next step. DM me the words podcast offer, and I will give you a special incentive to work with me inside of my signature program just because you are listening to the podcast. DM me on Instagram at Bare Bones Yoga. I can't wait to hear from you.